had a Zoom tutorial with our technician from university via Lisa's computer, so thank you Lisa so much for helping. I was discussing this leather skirt and also a pair of trousers from look number 3. My technician can't give me any better advice unless she sees the thing in person, because it's so different from showing on the screen than actually showing a piece of fabric that you're working with. So I kind of have to resort to working on this leather skirt right now, because in that studio where I got this sewing machine from, we have a professional industrial machine for leather and heavy fabrics, heavy duty fabrics. So I'm going to be able to sew this leather there, but also I'm going to try it on my machine because I think it's going to be able to perform the task. When I was cutting out the pieces last time, I forgot to add a little vent in here so that the person could actually walk in this very tight skirt. So I'm going to have to add another patchwork piece to both sides of those skirt patterns. I'm going to have to line the skirt as well because it's super dirty, because this is a recycled leather jacket I bought from Avita, and as you can see, I didn't remove some pieces of the jacket. I love how rubbed out those pocket details are, so I decided to keep them, and also I deliberately chose some pieces that had a bit more character to them. I am going to have to buy lining fabric tomorrow. I'm going to have to buy the threads for the stitches as well because I haven't finished them. I have to add the debossing effect to the skirt somehow without actually having a heat press, so I'm going to have to try to do that with an iron. So today's Monday the 20th, and I wanted to say that it was a very productive day. I'm super happy about it because I managed to create a pleating board from scratch because my other one stayed in Moscow and I had to make a new one to work in the trousers for look number 3. I created patterns for all of the tops / bodysuits of all of the 6 looks, so it was great. It wasn't that much work, to be honest, because they are sort of similar in the sense that you have to have some repetition in a collection. It's way easier to produce a collection if some patterns are similar. So I also managed to work a little bit with leather. My sewing machine works pretty well with it, so it wasn't that difficult. I'm gonna go and buy tomorrow the threads for it, and we'll see whether or not it's gonna handle quite thick thread for shoelaces and everything, but I'm very happy about it. I've got a lot of stuff done, and tomorrow going fabric shopping and doing a lot of things, so it's gonna be busy. I don't think I showed you yesterday, but I organized all of my prints. They're now hanging, all of my patterns, as well as the pleating board that I made yesterday, and I'm about to head out for the fabric stores. I have to buy a lot of things, so I've got all of my samples with me. I'm going to also try to have a little tester print done, but that depends on how much they're going to ask me, because in the last vlog I showed you a tester print for 2 A4 pieces, and they want 24 euros for that tester print. Can you imagine? 24 euros, Jesus Christ. Like, I'm gonna go and try to figure this out. Maybe that's not gonna be expensive for like they're actually using just the hot press. Right now I just stopped by Lipova, where I had another tester done on my dead stock polyester mesh, and also paid for the tester print that I did last week. So it turns out that the tester print was not 24 euros, it was 12 euros, because I reminded them again that it was on my own fabric. It was just 2 A4, so it was half the price that they originally sent me to the emails. There was a point in coming here, so I'm happy about that. What I'm not exactly happy about is that they did do a tester print on my mesh, and it was great. It looked amazing, everything was fine, and even that pixelation was not a big deal. But then I got super excited that I could bring it tomorrow, and they asked me whether or not it was on a whole roll of fabric. I said no, because I asked Lova to cut the pieces out, because otherwise it wouldn't have been possible for them to transfer it to me via package. Even if it wasn't a roll and they folded it to put inside my package, it would have creased a lot and they would not have accepted it anyway. So I'm now gonna have to find a different place where I could have the prints transferred to my fabric. I don't think there is any print that large. Typically they are about A2 size, and my pattern pieces are sometimes even larger than A1. For example, my leggings are about like m50, and I'm not sure whether or not hand prints exist like this. So roll printers apparently only accept paper that is on a roll instead of actual separate pattern pieces. I could obviously sew the pieces and then print on top of them when I'm in Moscow, but that's like the worst case scenario. I really don't want to do that. I went for fabric lining. I got fabric lining. I've already cut out the piece, which you'll see in the next clip. I bought spider net, which is a thin glue fabric, which will help me glue pieces for the top of look number 2, which I'm working right now. I also bought some cotton, which I'll transfer the leather strips onto. Maybe you've seen in the previous vlog, which I'll link down below in the I button above. But I will have to test out this black leather because I'm not sure how well it bleeds the color. Maybe it's not really treated, maybe it was black from the start, so we'll have to test it. But my previous coat that I bought from Avita was very good at bleeding its color color, so that cotton is for this transfer, whatever I call it last time. I also bought a half foot so that I could sew zippers pretty closely, and because on that leather skirt I have an invisible zipper, this will be very handy. There was an option to buy an invisible zipper foot, but I decided not to do it because it's not that versatile, and I think I'll be able to do a close stitch with this as well. Also bought threads for the red leather skirt, but I forgot the skirt sample at home, so it doesn't really match the color, and I'll go get a better one tomorrow. And I bought nude-ish, sort of like linen-y color threads for the trousers on look number 3, which I'll be working on after I finish this skirt. Hopefully tomorrow in the morning I'll be able to actually sew the skirt before our tutorial with Claire, which will be at 4 o'clock. I completely forgot, this was my tester that I talked about before. It's pretty good, I like it. I'm trying to make a pattern for my skirt, but because I made it quite a while ago and it stayed in Moscow because I have no idea where it is, probably underneath the table in the workroom, but I am trying to put it on before I actually start the pattern for the lining, because I'm not exactly sure where I decided to place the stitching. Because my skirt has an extension, it's a giant triangular like side piece. I initially planned for it to be fixed with stitching, with visible stitching to the side of the body, so that it will be a curvy side, but the problem is that the other side doesn't have any markings. I can't distinguish exactly whether or not that's the right placement, because I tried it on a mannequin before and on myself, but that was even before quarantine, so that was a while ago. I decided to clip them all together with regular like washing clips. They don't really hold the fabric that strong as the sewing clips would, but I just didn't want to poke holes in this beautiful leather. I may have to buy those clips anyways, just because I might be planning on sewing bags with leather and they might come handy, but for now these will do. This looks pretty interesting so far. I wouldn't mind having a skirt with those pokey sections just for keeping the social distance in the future. Sort of inspired by Victor and Rolf Garmin of the season, that could be fun. I've soaked the fabric, this 100% cotton, then I threw on some paper clips which are metal, and now I'm putting my genuine leather waist down, and hopefully this leather is treated with color, and it's now gonna bleed underneath the highest setting of my domestic iron. I'm also pressing it down quite a lot, because in that studio setting that I did it before, I pressed it very heavily with a heat, but I pressed it for about a minute, so if I have to do it on that skirt that I'm working on exactly the same way, it's gonna be a bit of a challenge and a workout. As you can tell, I pressed it pretty hard so that my calico started burning a little, which hopefully is a good sign. It did smell like leather, and I can see that it started gathering, which means that it did get some heat through itself. But unfortunately, as we can both see, no color was left over, so it tells me that either this is treated with color pretty well so that the whole color was soaked, or that this leather was black to begin with. Also managed to switch the position of the table last week, and I didn't show it to you because the table of the sewing machine is a little bit too short. In our university it usually ends somewhere about here. It's a little uncomfortable to sew large projects. Even that skirt is not that big, but still is quite long, and I don't think even a third of it is on that table. It sort of drags my project down, it hangs, it's a bit heavy, and it is distracting, so we decided to flip it this way so that this table acts as an extension of my sewing table. It's still far away from that divider curtain, not to be a fire hazard, but is pretty comfy, I think. I didn't really like how my invisible zipper looked with me sewing it with a half foot, so tomorrow when I go to buy zippers for tunnel, I'm also gonna purchase the zipper foot, which I decided not to buy and kind of cheap out on buying today. Also a pack of pins. There are maybe 20 pins, and I'm so used to having like 1,000, so I'm gonna just buy one. And also they don't have a pin cushion, so I'm making myself one. And if you remember, I sorted everything out, so in that box I have big scraps of fabric, and I also have a smaller box or like a jar with tiny scraps of fabric. So I just started making it. I'm using a thick elastic of leftover project. I made a base for the pin cushion, which I gathered along the bottom edge from the big scraps, and now I'm gonna just fill it in with smaller scraps from here. I stitched a little backing here and also a little bit of a cardboard inside, because when you push pins inside, because it is not deep enough for the whole pin to go through, it might just hit my arm, so I inserted this little cardboard. Today I bought an invisible zipper foot. It's pretty interesting in construction, so I hope it's gonna help me to actually sew a pretty good zipper in. Also, I decided to switch the color of the invisible zip because this one does look pretty good with the stitching color, but this dark brown is a bit better match than this red. Also, I bought different stitching color. It is not shiny enough as the original stitching that I was using, but it is thick, so hopefully it's not going to be too visible. And also bought some bias tape and zippers for the project for my work. So my leather transfer is not working and I didn't find any new leather, so I'm testing a very weird method, something in between a monoprint and just like basically covering everything up in acrylic. Monoprint is usually done with oil paints, but this method, shit, I was so excited, it almost worked. I'll show you. The first method didn't work because my plastic is too thick for me to actually get some pressure in between the lines of paper clips, but it left an impression, so I might be able to do a reverse monoprinting with a very heavy black outline. But that kind of looks interesting, sort of like the x-rays in the airport when you scan your clothing through and you find some coins maybe or something else. So I'll just be stomping all over it right now, trying not to smush everything into different directions. I resorted to taking black oil paint, and that outfit that I'm wearing right now is not going to cut it. So I'm wearing my old dress that I don't really mind getting dirty. Luckily my mom's paints are quite dry, which is very good for monoprinting. Printer's ink is quite dry on its own. In this case I don't really mind it being difficult to work with. I don't mind it being splotchy because my initial leather transfer print, which you've seen in my older blog, was very abstract and the color ink transfer was not even. I was using leather obviously, so it was bleeding however it wanted to. So with this first test, the ink transfer is quite similar to that leather, but I want it to be a bit more vibrant because in some areas it's almost completely white. Also, you can't see the actual outlines of those paper clips. That is something I should work on as well. I think the next sample I'll just wet the fabric so that it absorbs a bit better. The second monoprint is also a flop. We have to take a completely different direction and just use this crumpling method because it is appearing in different parts of my research. Once I let it dry, I just spread it out, and this will be a sort of organic crumpling textile piece. I should move on to actually constructing that skirt. I'll leave it a couple of days to dry. I'll make a larger piece and probably use this as lining for the pockets, which is not bad. I'll just come back to those leather transfer prints for perhaps the actual commercial collection that I might be selling later on after the degree collection. We'll see. So this is going to be my pocket lining. I should have actually put it in a larger piece of paper so that it would be a bit easier for me to transfer in the same position because I want to iron it later on as well. But maybe I could bring my iron in here and then just cover it with thin paper and iron it right now. It's 40 minutes past 1 o'clock at night already. I just finished working on my skirt for today. I haven't finished it and I'm not too far away from finishing actually, which is very exciting. I went to that sewing studio for the first time today and I was very happy about it because the place is great, there's enough space for me to work on, and the people there are amazing, so super thankful to my connections basically. I started working on the skirt. I had pattern pieces already cut and I had the invisible zipper on the back finished in the whole machine, but I wanted to top stitch them, so I found the threads in Carnalex today after 4 times of searching in different shops, and suitable threads, not perfect ones, but still workable, shiny enough, and I top stitched them in that studio. I also worked a bit on the pocket. I finished the pocket, so I do have a body extension now finished, and I also tried to work on those paper clip emboss. They're not exactly as 3-dimensional as on my samples. It's because I don't have a press and I had to press them with an iron, and I worked my arm muscles quite a lot because I had to press it down so heavily and it still didn't leave much impression. That's why when I went home I started sort of hammering with a very wide hammer which is called kiyanka in Russian. I have no idea what it is in English, and I managed to punch a hole in my front. This is such a tradition of mine. I wish I filmed my vlogs from the first year of bachelor's, because you would have seen every time when I'm close to finishing a garment, I make a hole in the front. With my white shirt, a hole in the front. With my blue jeans, a hole in the front. Black dress. Every project that I've ever made, I always have a hole in the front just near finishing. So it's a tradition. I just fused it with very strong fusing on the back, and I hope it's not gonna unravel. But well, it gives a character. At this point, I don't really care much about minute details like this. That's why I made a different pocket, as you saw me try, and I used this print instead of the one that I had initially planned, which would have been this if I find the photo. So I am quite happy with it. I managed this, and also when I was home I finished the lining for it, which was very difficult. It's not finished lining for the entire skirt, but I made a vent, which I've never made before. That's why it's so ugly and wonky in some areas, but I'll iron it out. Hopefully it will look a bit better, but I'm very happy with what I have so far. Like, making a vent was the most difficult part of the skirt so far. I watched like 10 videos, I think, and I still could not wrap my head around how it works, but I finally found some random step-by-step tutorial written blog, and it was so great. I'll link it down below for Russian speaking people, because it was in Russian as well. Constructed the lining. It's not fully sewn in. I pinned it on myself so it fits pretty well, but then the leather part does not fit exactly perfectly, so I'm gonna just have to fit it to myself and fix this section because it's a little bit too wide on me, and then the back area, because in here the seam is not fixed, so I'm gonna have to turn it inside out and fix it. And initially I was planning on maybe top stitching this area so that this extension would be very flat to my body, but I think I'm gonna wait on that and show it to my tutor on our next tutorial, which is gonna be on the 17th, I think. So I'm pretty happy with it. All that's left to do is fix the waistline, fix this gaping area by flipping it inside out, reversing it, trying on me without the lining, and finishing the hemline. It's Sunday and I'm trying to construct a pattern for trousers on look number 3. I initially wanted to do that a bit earlier, but because I had a lot of stuff to do, I kind of had to postpone it till the later of the week, till the end of the week. It is a little bit dirty and wonky because I actually initially constructed a pattern for those trousers, but I left it in Moscow and I had absolutely no idea where it was. So Loa couldn't send it to me because I could not explain where it is because I had no idea. So I started constructing it again. All I remembered from the notes I took, and thankfully took photos and a full tour of my sketchbook, which you can see, I'll link it up in the clickable eye button. I made this extension for the trousers to have this little flap. I also filmed a video of everything that goes into fashion assessment, which I'll also link up in the description and in the clickable eye button, and where you can see the technical specification sheets for those trousers because they're constructed very specifically. And I'm not sure if you can see that, but their little line on the back is actually a whole piece on those trousers, and I'll put it on the screen right now so that you can understand me. So also obviously be adding another 65 centimeters in here because the trousers were 140 centimeters in length, which is very tall, but I'll be crumbling them on the bottom, which will make them a bit shorter, like another 10 centimeters shorter, which is still quite tall. I hope I will find a tall enough model for my photo shoot and the actual runway, if that ever happens.